Here we go then, the big East Kent Cyclocross League battle, and I got off to an absolute flyer of a start, got clipped in straight away and absolutely nailed it. This way was a tailwind, this race was super windy, and it's probably one of the most exciting races that I've ever been involved in and will ever commentate on. Obviously, as you can see, I didn't actually have the beans to get the whole shot. The Kingston Wheelers and CNN rider just got the better of me into this final corner, and then Jack G comes around the outside of me, and I was like, I've got to just jump on his wheel straight away, and I tried to sneak up his inside, and he shuts the door on me, just plants his backside on me. I was like, and I shouted, look at him look over his shoulder now, because I shouted, Jackie G! But it was an absolute wicked race this. There was attacks, and it's going to be a slightly longer commentary video than recently, because I was in the mix for longer than normal, but we're coming off this gravel section and now into the mud. Certain bits of this course were super fast, and other bits were into an absolute howler of a headwind, but we're dismounting here for the steps. Any running just spikes your heart rate. I haven't got the heart rate monitor on because I'm too lazy to go and buy a new battery, but next video we'll have it back up and running. But this way down here was into a brutal headwind, so although I didn't get the whole shot, I was quite happy to be a wheel sucker down here. And I'm a bit off the wheel here because I felt like it was coming a little bit off the left as well. But if you were on the front down this part of the course heading down this way, it was absolutely savage, and fair play to the Kingston Wheeler guy that's on the front and led this out, because in a minute there is a brutal straight and he must have been chewing the stem down there. But into the first little technical bit of the course, we've got this off-camber section, and then it kicks straight into this bank. This bank was brutal. As the laps, look at the power you've got to do just to get up, and I think I had to put my foot down there and do a little truffle shuffle. But as soon as you come down there, you're dismounting for a run over the hurdles. No one was jumping the hurdles in this race. Even Kishan and Alec Briggs, who normally do jump, didn't jump the hurdles because of the wind. It would have just taken you out. And another little kicker, yeah, but over the hurdles, if Kishan tried to jump it, he'd have got blown into next week because it was that windy. But this section here is where it was so important to be on a wheel. So you just knew that every lap I had to play the game here. I had to be a wheel sucker, because the big danger men in this race for me, I wanted to try and win this race. The big danger men are Jack in front, Kishan and Alec, and they're all stronger than me. They're all more powerful than me. But just here, you'll see I do start to go to the front and rip it. The reason why is I saw Kishan making an attack over my shoulder. That's why you've always got to be wary when you're sat in there. So as soon as I saw Kishan go, I started to ramp it up, because you've got to get on his wheel straight away. And I mean, he's not much of a windshield, I'm not going to lie, but I just said to myself, I know how strong he is, and I've raced against Kishan quite a few times, so I just knew straight away, you've got to pounce on his wheel, get on it and try and go with it. And when he put these little digs in out of the corner, I was thinking, holy cow, my legs have not got this today. And I made an absolute schoolboy on this next corner. I almost T-boned him. I thought the course went straight on there. I don't know why, I completely forgot, but he was just, every chance he got on one of the downwind section, Kishan was just ripping it. You can see here, absolutely ripping it. And we go into the single track now, and he's a mountain biker, so he knows he's definitely got the better techers than me as well. So as soon as we come into this section, he was just absolutely railing it, putting on the pressure, and you've got to go with it. Look, out the saddle, bish bash bosh. But the one segment I was struggling with is coming up in a second, and it's something that I still need to work on. I totally think the big problem for me is just that raw power, the raw watts. I'm not like, at the moment, I'm not at the lightest weight I've ever been, but my power's not anymore. Whereas I think what I need to do personally, I need to try and raise the FTP, get the raw power up. I know we're always saying that, need to get a higher FTP, but I really do think that raw power I need to get up, rather than, I've been doing a lot of like on-off efforts. I'm quite good at that, not to blow my own trumpet, but I'm good when I get that recovery. It's when you're on the gas and then you hit a muddy section and you've really got to grind. So it's a case of building strength and building the raw power. So as we come into this downhill section here, this drag uphill was absolutely killer. And it was where I struggled the most. See, I'm already off running. And the reason why I decided to do that, I think it's one, you can see the boys are just outpowering me here. I decided before the race, the next couple of laps, I do try and ride further along this section. But what I decided was damage limitation, get off and run, rather than absolutely blowing out my legs, try and blow out my lungs a bit. I know I've said in the past, I'm not the best runners, but I feel like that's one area that saves me quite a lot. I know like how to limit the damage, if that makes sense. If riding a section's gonna completely blow my biscuit, I know I've got to get off and run and just take the consequences. But Jackie G goes straight into the tape. Chopper! So Georgie boy goes to the front of the race and he does not want to be at the front because it is too windy for this little noodle boy with no power. But this little section here is where Ian said ride across the thing. So I tried it and it was a little bit better, but I don't think I was getting enough angle. In my last video, Ian said you got to come across that bank, that compression, but up here was another savage little climb, and this is when Alec attacks on the right. He's just got so much raw power, and that is what I'm missing. And when he went past me, look, he just like wiped his mouth, and I was like, oh my god, he's absolutely cruising, and I was on the limit. And then with being on the limit, what happens? You make a silly mistake. Sorry about the mud on the camera. I should have stayed far right here to get up this bank. I didn't. I slipped again, and then the gap opened up. He looks over his shoulder, starts pressing on. I ease off because I think I do not want to blow up. But then I realise Kishan's going to come round, so I've got to accelerate, jump on his wheel. I wanted these boys to shut it down. Chopper move because I made the mistake, yes. But I also, when I'm racing against people that I know are strong riders, you've sort of got to play your hand sometimes and make them do the work. And I'm getting a little bit better at that. In the past, I'd have panicked and tried to shut that gap down, but I knew for a fact that Kishan wanted revenge on Alec after he beat him at regional champs. So I was like, Kish is gonna shut the gap down and I'll just jump on their wheel and get a ride over. But it wasn't quite that easy because the pace just got lifted. And we knew we needed to shut that gap down as soon as possible. Alec's a really good crit racer, roadie, so he's got the power on the flats and these drags. So Kish and Jack did manage to shut the gap down. Heroes, take my hat off to them because there was no way this chopper was going to be able to shut it down. I made the mistake. And this next bit here, I almost went to the front and then I thought, what are you doing, Georgie boy? Don't do it. The pace completely eased out the group. Look at, in a second, like we're all just looking at each other. It's like we're playing cat and mouse in the last 2K of a Tour de France stage. We're all looking at each other. We've got 52 minutes left to race. No one wanted to go to the front. It was just like everyone was like, who's going to take it? Who's going to take it? Absolutely no one. And then who steps up? The big man, Kishan. The skinniest bloke in the bunch decides to come through and pull for us. A true champion. It's slightly different this lap this time. Rather than going straight up, we have this little mound, little muddy mound to go over, which is a cool little addition. The first lap, we just tanked it straight down the road. And this is when Kishan starts putting the hurt on in a minute. I was surprised he went to the front. I thought he was going to play the game as well and sit in. No, it was just everyone looking at each other. You know what it's like when there's a headwind, and that's the one thing I normally hate about like crits and road racing, when no one wants to pull on the front and you all just cruise round like absolute numpties. But that's why I love cross, because normally it's just every man for himself. But I really wanted to try and win this race, so I was playing every tactic I could, and it was just a case of now I knew I had to stay on the wheel, cover any attacks. But the worrying bit was, I think all of us knew that Alec was really strong on those power sections, so we just had to keep an eye on him. And after he won regional champs, we knew he was obviously going well. The other thing I wanted to know if he does watch this and can comment, what tyres was he running? Because obviously I was running full muds at 21 psi. Kish in front of me was running Baby Limus, I think. So I thought it was a mud course. Maybe I'm wrong. It was just them couple of sections I felt like I needed the grip. I don't think you were losing that much power. But look, Kish is putting on the hurt now. We are off and running, and this is where it starts to hot up now in a minute. The attacks start coming, and honestly, I was a shell of a man trying to go with them. I wish my heart rate monitor was on, because I was just digging in with everything I had right now. So up this bank again, look at the watts you've got to put out to get up this bank. It's absolutely crazy. It just, every time it just rips your legs, and then you back off for the hurdles running, which then spikes your heart rate again before you get into that next bank. Absolutely wicked course. If they have this one on again next year, I highly recommend. It's a bit of a mission to get there. You can see that gap's opened up to Kish now, and I'm thinking, close it down, Georgie boy, because the headwind drag's going to come. I knew that I needed to be glued to his wheel for this next section, because your big nose needs to stay out of the wind. So just there, he made a tiny little mistake, which I think slowed his pace a little bit, and I just ripped it there to get on his wheel. He's holding a good power, but I reckon you were saving well over 100 watts right now in someone's wheel. It was absolutely crazy the amount of watts you were saving down here, because I kid you not, it must have been a 50-mile-an-hour gusts down this bit. So God knows what power Kishan was doing, but he must have been putting it down to be dragging us along that section, because I'm doing like 300 watts. I know he's not much of a windbreak, but I am putting it in to go with him. But he plays a very smart move, and I didn't expect him to attack here. After dragging us down that drag, Kish puts in a big attack, and this is when I thought it was going to be signed, sealed, delivered, dispatched. And one thing you want to note is he attacks on the downwind. Perfectly timed, just out of this corner, look, rips it. 600-700 watts, 400 watts, trying to close the gap, because he knows we're not getting any benefit on his wheel now, and he can sling it into this. Look how tight he took that line there, and he can sling it into this single track and just put the power down and try and distance us for when we get to the next headwind section. And I was on the limit through here trying to go with it. It was just like, I was like, Kishan, what are you doing? Slow down. This is because Mr. Field has told him, do not let Georgie boy win. But luckily I managed to deal with the attack, and I was like, at this point now you're thinking, all you need is the pace to ease a bit just to get that recovery. But if you remember from the last lap, we had that horrible grassy muddy drag in a second, and that is when the next attack comes in, and it's when the elastic starts to snap for Georgie boy. I just, honestly, you can see here Kishan's still putting the hurt on, and I think in a minute he looks over his shoulder and notices that he hasn't made the dent in our legs that he thought he was gonna. And we're coming into that muddy section now, and Alec attacks hard, I think, over the top of this. I can't remember exactly. It might have been Alec, it might have been Jackie G. I tried to ride it a little bit further this section this time, just to try and save my lungs. But you can see here, I felt like Kishan was struggling for grip here. So he was saying it was a Baby Limus course. I thought it was full muds. Who knows? He beat me, spoiler alert, so maybe he was right. But we're back off and running now, and you'll see over the top the benefit of being able to stay on your bike, because that's when Alec comes through and goes past us, I think, on this section here. By the time we've remounted, faffed about clipping in because you've got all that mud in your shoes, just here, Alec comes past like a steamboat. Look at that, and attacks straight away. I was like, what on earth are you doing? What timing to put us in an absolute hole. And Kishan makes a mistake because we're on the limit, because we've had to get off and run. It really, when you get off and run, for me anyway, I don't know if the other boys are the same, but it really spikes the heart rate. And then you're like, oh my God, I've got to get back on the bike and put the power down. And because Alec managed to ride that section, he just completely whacked it over the top, and fair play to him. It was a strong attack. But fear not, the boys are on the chase, and we do manage to shut this down. And when I say we, it is definitely not me. I get absolutely dispatched over the top here. I tried everything, up that little drag to go with it. I got dispatched by Kish, and I think Jack comes round me in a second, and I'm just like saying to myself, you've got to just get on his wheel and go with it to try and shut that gap down. But yet again, I was making the mistake of coming down this left-hand side. But after about 5 laps of doing that chopper move on the left, I finally realised I needed to stay high right, hold my speed, and you just shot up that bank with no problems. But yeah, I'm thinking right now I'm in a big hole, and I thought, I'll be completely honest, I thought right now this was completely race over for me. The boys were pressing on in front. My only hope was, I say this in every video, never give up, because if Kishan bridges over, which he does, the pace is going to ease out of the front two again, because neither of them are going to want to do that toe down the headwind stretch. So that's what you've got to remember. Someone asked me once before, how do you stay motivated to keep pressing on when you're on your own and you've been dropped? You've got to just remember that if that group in front eases up, it is your chance to get back on. And now, I know you've already been dropped and you may not be able to beat them, but maybe when you get back on, the pace eases enough that you can recover. So I'm not a million miles away. I'm about one corner, and you can see Kishan's just about to bridge over to Alec. And as soon as they hit that tarmac stretch, they're then going to ease off the gas. And I think that is when Jackie G comes round and saves the day. I remember coming onto this tarmac stretch here, and I looked over my shoulder, saw he was on my wheel, and he's been training on the road and plans to race road this season. So I was thinking, boy's going to have some power. So I flicked my elbow, and I say to him, look Jack, he just smiled at me, and I was like, look Jack, if you do a turn, we can shut that gap down. And he comes round and just starts absolutely putting the power down. I was like, good Jackie boy! After you slipped out at the beginning, he is now putting the power down and closing the gap. If it wasn't for Jack, I would not have got back to the front of the race. But I'm not going to lie, the legs were absolutely spent at this point, but thank you Jack G for coming through and just absolutely ripping it. You can see the two boys there, the pace has eased out of it now, exactly what I said. As soon as they get back together, Alec's a road racer and Kishan's a smart racer, neither of them are going to pull a turn. So they're going to be looking at each other, which opens it up for me and Jack to get back on. And Jack does a phenomenal job, top ride, lad, and honestly I feel a bit bad for using him. And in a minute we go past pits and his dad was like, he's using you, Jack, don't let him sit on your wheel. And I was like, yeah, I am using you, Jack, but you know, your boy's got to do what he's got to do. But coming down here, we were absolutely railing it almost in that bush. You've got to love it. And it was, I think it was down the headwind drag where we get back on. So you can see the two of them, we have closed a massive gap. Why? Because they're not working together. They're looking at each other. And Jack knows that, so he puts a big effort in. And I'm thinking, just get on his wheel because there's a headwind here. Get the old big schnozzer out of the headwind. Let's go, boy. We're back in business. You can see the two in front. And we are back in the front group. I honestly thought there was no way we'd get back on, but that is proof to never give up. I mean, we're not completely on, but I mean, you can see we're literally like five seconds max off their wheel. So one surge and we'll be back on, and then they'll ease the pace again. But the problem was they had had that chance to recover. Me and Jack had still been going absolutely full beans trying to get back on. Those two had been getting a little bit of recovery, and don't get me wrong, they're still pressing on, but they were getting the recovery, so they weren't on their limit, whereas me and Jack were probably right on our limit at this point. So you can see here, back over, and we're pretty much back on the group now. I was really struggling getting clipped in, just getting mud in my shoes every time we dismount. So that is why I kept losing little gaps, but I was just about managed to shut it down. And you knew that all of us knew you had to be on a wheel for this next section again. This was the killer headwind section where no man wanted to do a turn. I can't remember exactly who does the turn, but I know Jackie G rips it here because he knows he don't want to be on the front, so he quickly puts a big surge in. He must have been doing like 400-500 watts at this point to shut this down through the mud, because I reckon I was saving 100 watts in his wheel. But look, we are back in the front group, baby, and we are back in business. And what did he do? Jack unclipped there for some reason. But you can see just here, this is when the pace eased out of it. Look, no one wanted to be on the front, and you don't want to be on the front whacking it, because then it's even more of a draft, if that makes sense. So everyone's eased up. You can see like we're doing like 100, 200 watts now. These boys are capable of way more than that. We're like look at the speed we're going at. This is granny speed. And honestly, I was here for it. And then bang, they attack out of a corner. It's absolutely brutal. You think, oh, I'm getting a bit of recovery, and they get on that next corner and they just rip it out the saddle. Look, 700 watts, bang, bang, bang. And you've got to just go with it. You've got to suffer. You can see how quickly those gaps open up, and it's like I think they call it the accordion effect or something like that. And look at us ease up again. In road racing, you know, where you're the back man, you're always getting stretched out that bit further where the guy in front's whacking it, and it does cause a massive problem. So when you're in a group like this, honestly, if I had the power, I would have preferred to be second wheel right now, because at least then every time we spike out of the corner, I wasn't having to work as hard because of that like elastic stretching. The problem was I just didn't have the legs or fitness to get past them. And I didn't want to just completely chop someone, because I can't be chopping Jack after he got me back on. But yeah, being on the back just doesn't help, because every time Alec accelerates on the front out of a corner, that elastic stretching, and then I've got to put even more of a dig in to shut that gap down, which is absolutely savage. Look, you see there, little gap opens, and then I've got to surge even harder. And this next section is when the monumental attack kicks in, and it was full gas, and the elastic completely stretched. The wheels fell off for Georgie boy, and it was Ian Bill, I've got nothing. Honestly, out of here, we come down into this grass, into the muddy hill, and Alec just raw powers it away from us. Look at the power I'm doing, like 600 watts. I'm really giving it everything, and he's riding away from us like we're stood still. He's doing that little tactic where he's like swinging onto the pavement if you look up in front. Swinging on, swinging on. I am giving it everything. You can see there I just had to get off and run because I was losing momentum. Look at, did you see the gap he put into me? And that is exactly what I mean about raw power. I do not have it, and I think personally, if anyone's got any good advice for me, I think it is about bumping my FTP up as much as I can and doing more sustained effort stuff. But that's something I'm going to work on this year. But I do manage to get back onto Jackie G's wheel, and you can see Kishan's gone now. They are over the hurdles, round the corner and up the next hill, and I just couldn't go with it. That attack was so full on that the legs just couldn't deal with it. But it was absolutely wicked being in the mix with those boys, because there was the different attacks going on, and being in the action on the front is so much fun. Like, I know what, when I spoke to Ian, he said the difference between being at the front and winning a race, the big difference is having that little bit in reserve. And at the moment, I don't have that bit in reserve, and I have to play it smart by being a wheel sucker, stuff like that, and knowing when I should get off the bike and run, and anticipating stuff like that. But hopefully with a bit of work in this summer period, and when I'm racing mountain bike, I'm really going to do a block now of base training and then try and do some threshold and strength work to really get that raw power up. But Jackie G's putting the hammer down, and this is when, in a second, when it all starts to go absolutely out the window for him, and I secure my third place finish. Spoiler alert, Alec wins, Kishan comes second, and then I finish third. This is when Jack makes the mistake here. I think he hits one of the stakes trying to go out onto the road just here, and then I completely rear end him there, bang, straight into the back of Jackie G. And at that point I think he got stuck in the tape where he was trying to like use all of the course. I just thought, absolutely sprint like Mo Farah. I remember running up here thinking get aero when you run and just whack it as hard as you can to get a gap on him, and I did manage to get a gap. You'll see in a second as I go around the corner the gap I had. So as I come past pits here, that is Jack on the right there. So once I got that gap, I knew it was just a case of getting my head down and then every lap just keep putting it down, and I knew that that gap was just growing, and I think he had gone a little bit too deep when he tried to close the gap down to the front boys, and I was being a wheel sucker. But that was it. It's a wrap. I didn't manage to win the East Kent League race to get Ian Field out of retirement, but an absolutely wicked course, and I managed to hang on, secure third place. And honestly, if you get the chance to go and ride this course, it's savage, windy, brutal, but absolutely wicked. I hope you enjoyed this slightly longer commentary. I couldn't whittle it down because there was just so much going on at the start of the race, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next video.